Joining us on the program now from Laidlaw College, Reverend Matt Maslin. Kia ora, good morning.
Kia ora, good to be here.
It is a challenge, really, isn't it? And I think the contrast of having that time where you've got a little bit more time on your hands, where things are a little bit more relaxed, when you're in holiday mode. I certainly found that over Christmas. I thought, I've got all these spiritual practices and I'm really, this is really adding value to my life. And then you get back to the busyness of your routine and some of that goes out the window, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I'm really happy for my brothers and sisters in Christ who have primary age kids and have things like school holidays. I've got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I
Cool.
wouldn't say that I'm particularly conducive to silence or helpful for my kind of
your day will come, Matt. But I suppose the thing is, whatever stage of life you're at, don't wait for the silence to come to you. You have to make a bit of that, eh?
Yeah, well, I would say there's kind of two different kinds of silence. There's, or in terms of how we practice it, there's additive silence. So silence we can add into our lives, maybe finding time before we go to bed to kind of switch off, disengage, and to kind of just sit in the presence of God and sense what God might be wanting to say to us.
Mm-hmm.
Or, taking time and on your lunch break to sit in your car and just to be quiet and to get away from it all. So there's additive silence, but I also think there's what I'd call opportunistic silence, where there's times of silence that just kind of present themselves during the day, and instead of trying to get away from the discomfort of the silence, we actually just embrace it. So I don't know, when your Bluetooth speakers run out of battery and you're desperately trying to find some, get them charged to kind of add to the noise again. There's moments when we find ourselves in silence or we're in an awkward social situation. Instead of trying to fill it in, to actually take it as an opportunity to sense what God might be doing and to kind of, I'd say, live in reality. And the past is gone, the future's not yet. The only thing that's real is the present moment. And the most important thing in any present moment is that God's Spirit is with us and wants to meet with us. And so, this is my ongoing challenge, is to try and practice adding silence in, but also to transform silence in my life.
And I love the fact that you talk about the Bluetooth speaker, whatever it is, because we're very good at filling the gaps, filling those silences, whether they be awkward conversations, and hey, it's occupational hazard as a radio announcer. Dead air is not my friend. But actually, if we can be conscious to fill the gaps, can we also be conscious to not fill the gaps, to be purposeful in our pausing, purposeful and perhaps taking out some of that filler between conversations and noise?
Yeah, I think this is really important. And I think this is where kind of secular culture gets distraction wrong. So there's a thousand books or kind of Instagram posts all about the kind of how we live in the age of distraction.
Yeah.
And most of these books, their main thesis will be the problem with distraction is it stops us from being productive.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the wrong diagnosis. It's like, oh, if I wasn't so distracted, I could get more done. I think, quite the opposite is true. And I think the problem with distraction is it kind of takes us out of reality, and it prevents us from engaging with our own humanity and also the reality of God. And I think why we distract ourselves most of the time is because we're uncomfortable with sitting in who we are.
Yeah.
When things go quiet and there's nothing else except ourselves, we look inward and we start to panic.
Yeah.
And when we are alone with our own thoughts, we realize we're deeply broken people, and that's okay. That's the reality of being human, is that we are deeply broken. But I think we kind of freak out about that and try and fill in the space. But in silence, yes, we're confronted with our deep brokenness, but we're also met with God's profound love of us, regardless of that. And we need those two things to kind of mesh together in silence, not just the confrontation of our broken humanity, but also the presence of a loving God who meets us and gives us grace regardless of that.
Rather than self-medicating our discomfort with more noise, more distraction. And I love the contrast as well between saying, hey, if only we could be more productive, if only we could procrastinate less, then we would achieve more. But actually, life isn't summed up by what we achieve, but more about the relationships, the connections that we have with each other and ultimately with God.
Yeah, 100%. And, we can go through a lot of our life getting distracted. And it's really interesting, major governments and experts are kind of looking at this issue of data pollution, or some call it data fog.
Yeah.
And some are saying, we need essentially a Paris climate agreement between countries to sort out this idea of data pollution, because there's just so much data out there. There's in 2020 they worked out there were 40 times more bytes of data on the internet than there are stars in the observable universe.
Wow.
And they also reckon that the amount of data created now every 15 minutes is the equivalent to all the words spoken since the dawn of time. So, there's this huge amount of data out there. And the purpose of this data is to economize our attention, essentially, to
Yep.
distract us, to get us tuned into this data, and then to monetize it.
Yeah.
There's a theologian, Tripp Fuller. He says, yes, this is true, but it's actually much worse than that. He kind of talks about how what's going on is the colonization of consciousness.
Wow.
And that's seriously like these companies, all this data, it's not our friend, and it's actually trying to change the way we engage with the world and with each other and with ourselves and with God, essentially. And I think this is valid. I think this is something we need to be aware of.
Yep.
And to kind of, both create opportunities to engage in silence, but also to transform the silence that we might occasionally, depending on your life circumstance, come across in our lives. Yeah,
I do like the idea of there's more data, there's more data fog out there than there are stars in the known universe, because honestly, whether it be through fog or through the brightness of urban development, if there's too much of that, you can't see the stars. If there's too much of that, you can't see the wonder of God's creation. If there's too much artificial light, you can't see the source of the true light. If there's too much productivity, there's not enough space for peace and spirituality.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess the challenge for me as both a priest but also a father is to think about the implications of this for my kids, and not just the attentiveness I give to God, but also the attentiveness I give my kids. And something I did over Lent was when I got home, I had my phone charger in the kitchen, and I would put it on there. And if I wanted to use it, I have to go over to the charger. I wouldn't take it off the charger.
Yep.
And it's, checking some emails or whatever. And then I didn't take, I usually have it on my bedside. I didn't do that over Lent. And I've continued that on because, man, I just think like there's nothing more obnoxious than scrolling in front of your kids that want to play with you. But it's really easy to slip into that. And I say this as someone who's obviously guilty of doing this. But there's I like the way you've kind of framed that. The data kind of takes our attentiveness away from not just God, but the beautiful things in this world, the stars and the observable universe, and the way that God reveals himself through the Imago Dei of children, our loved ones, people around us. And really what we're trying to do is kind of reclaim our consciousness and mental space.
Exactly.
And to kind of give the middle finger to algorithms and all these things that are vying for our attention. And I think silence is actually an act of resistance in our culture.
Lean into the uncomfortable. I'm a big fan of awkward, honestly. I mean, as regular listeners to my show will attest. But I also love the idea of let's take some of our Lenten practices and go, this is the time where we have these holy spiritual practices, and say, hey, which one? Some of these are really working for me. Just because we've hit Easter doesn't mean that we don't continue to have these practices in our lives. Let's hold on to the silence that draws us closer to God and closer to each other. Matt, thanks for sharing your wisdom on this. Thanks so much for being on the program.
Good to be here. Thanks.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.